Welcome to the JLI Roar Learning Institute's program on Israel, and giving an insider's look at how Israel is overcoming the dual crises of the coronavirus and Israeli politics. I'm Gil Hoffman. I've been the chief political correspondent and analyst for the Jerusalem Post for 20 years, and I appreciate Rabbi Mintz and the wonderful people at JLI for inviting me to address this group. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm here in the startup nation, and yet there are still problems with the most technical details here. But I'm a big fan of JLI. Speak to every group that they bring to Israel. There's no better way to see Israel than through the experts at JLI, who bring you like a VIP to all the best places in Israel, along with several hundred other people who are striving to learn more about the Jewish state and about their Judaism. Um, and I'm also very thankful to Chabad itself for helping me reach out to people all over the world in such an impressive way. I've been lucky enough to lecture in all 50 states, became the first person to do that 2.5 years ago when I spoke at the synagogue in Hawaii that trademarked the word shaloha. And before that, at the synagogue in Alaska that trademarked the words frozen chosen. Um, and I could not have gone to all 50 states if it were not for Chabad, um, especially in those flyover states. I'm very appreciative of the rabbis in Utah and Idaho and Wyoming, and of course in Montana. I had wonderful experiences over there, and I am uh, the I did actually make it to South Dakota before Chabad, which is one of my biggest accomplishments in life. So I appreciate the turnout that there is here. I appreciate people giving up their afternoon or seeing this later. Um, if we're allowed to have so many Jews gather together in one place, I hope that Bill de Blasio is not here watching us right now. He might arrest us all. So I have to be pretty careful with that. I'm glad that there are people here who've heard me speak in the past coming to their synagogue, or who heard me on a JLI trip to Israel. As you see, I look a little different right now. And unfortunately, my mother passed away 27 days ago on the second day of Passover after a very, very long fight with cancer that she fought valiantly. She did not die because of Corona, but if you want to blame Corona, you can feel free. Blame everything on Corona, it deserves it. But no, she did die from breast cancer after, and it remains a tremendous inspiration for me. And I miss her terribly, and I also can't wait until this mourning period that I'm in ends, because um, only when the 30 days are up can I get rid of this beard that is on my face. That has really made me have even more appreciation for the Chabad rabbis all around the world who seem to all have beards. I have never gone this long without shaving in my life, and it's awful. I got hair growing in places where hair should not be, and on my lips and all over my face. And uh, good job, Chabad rabbis, in enduring this for so long. I've been saying Kaddish in the yard of the synagogue that's right outside my door. I have never said Kaddish indoors, only outdoors. This being Israel, I've never said Kaddish yet without a street cat being present. And davening outside every day has given me a permanent tefillin tan line on my arm that it will never go away. I have been chazan outside in freezing cold weather and rain and sun that made me sweat so much. and that was all in one day, one davening of Shacharit, thanks to the weather here in Jerusalem. Um, and so before I get to Israel, I guess this being a Chabad event, I have to mention the Torah portion of the week, just and more. And while it's mostly about the priests, um, there also is a commandment there to count the Omer, as we are doing. When my Shloshim 30-day mourning period ends, I will be in a national mourning period still of the Omer for another day and a half, which means I still shouldn't shave. Um, but the fact that we always count between Passover and the Shavuot holiday really says something about the Jewish people, that we appreciate every moment and every day, that we've learned patience, though we're not really known for it as a people, but we are. That is something that we strive for. And I appreciate being part of a religion that counts leading up to the receiving of the Torah that we're going to have on Shavuot, that looks forward to that for a life experience of adding uh, the Torah, adding this instructions for living to our life. That is something worth counting up to, from my point of view. And so, veering from the Torah portion to the politics. Of course, the Torah portion talks about the Kohanim, the priests, and the people who wash their hands are the Leviim and the Levites. We currently in Israel are being led by the second most successful Levite in the history of mankind after Moses, and that is Netanyahu. There are a lot of incidents that tried to bring down Moses, and he always came out on top. And That's very impressive. He had to deal with the Jewish people who, even back then, kvetched all the time and made his job really hard. His father-in-law tried to give him advice, and it didn't really work. The people kept on complaining. And the same thing has to do with Netanyahu as this thankless job where people complain all the time. People are constantly trying to find dirt on him. Me as a journalist, that's my job too. But has managed to survive, to endure. He's going to become the longest serving Western leader during this upcoming fifth straight term in office. Except for 10 years there in the middle, he has been in power since 1996. That is a very, very long time ago. He has definitely proven his staying power, and maybe his plan is to last for 40 years, or and more, the way that Moses did, as he tries to get the Jewish people through the desert, and he has definitely come a long way. And so let's think about what he's been through now that we're talking about the crisis of politics. That crisis started back in December of 2018. Let's go back in history. When someone in Israel tells you that they're going to take you back in history, they usually mean thousands of years. I'm going to take you all the way back to December 2018. That was when the Speaker of the Knesset announced with great fanfare that they were going to finish the proceedings of the Knesset early on December 24th. In honor of, am I allowed to say this in a JLI talk? Christmas Eve. Um, in honor of the Christian members of Knesset, we're proud that we have people of different religions in our parliament. But the Speaker of the Knesset at the time, Yuli Edelstein, made a big mistake and forgot that all Christian members of Knesset are Orthodox Christians, which means they celebrate Christmas on January the 7th, which meant that the only person who was going to be benefiting from this decision was going to be me, because I honor my American Jewish heritage by going to a movie and eating Chinese food that night. And little did we know, though, that when December 24th came, that day Netanyahu would decide to move up our elections, which were set for November 2019. And he moved them up to April of 2019. And little did we know back then that we'd end up having 3 elections for the price of 3, which is no bargain. Um, and now, thankfully, because of the events of the last 24 hours, now it's almost for sure that we will not be going to a fourth election, that we will, in fact, have a government after having three elections in which Israel single-handedly proved Einstein's theory of insanity, of doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, what has been impressive is that in the three elections that we've had, the turnout kept on going up. You'd think people would be sick of going to vote after the first time and wouldn't go a second time. But the turnout went up from the first time to the second time. And you thought for sure after the second time, for the third time, no way. The second time was in the summer. A record number of Israelis went to the beach that day, but they couldn't go in the water in part because there weren't jellyfish or anything, but there were spineless politicians who came to the beach to beg people to vote. And they did. And then the third time, the people did it again. They went out to vote for a third time, raising our turnout to 71.5%. I'm from Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, where we had an election for mayor a little bit more than a year ago. The turnout there was only 33%. And half those people were dead, and the other half were voting twice. So here, 71.5% turnout, very impressive. It shows that people really do care about the future of Israel. Um, Now, why did we go to three elections in a row? The answer is that our politicians weren't lying. That was the problem. You may be in other countries that are watching this or states, maybe you have leaders there where the problem is that they lie too much. In Israel, the problem was our politicians were not lying enough. During the campaign, one politician said, if in the next government, I won't sit with that guy. Another one said, in the next government, I won't sit with her. Now, in the past, politicians made promises during the campaign and then conveniently forgot them after the election, and that is how we had governments. This time around, nope, they remained steadfast to their convictions after the first election, after the second election, and it turned out that they weren't lying, and they really didn't sit with each other. And we never ended up having 61 members of Knesset out of 120, a majority to agree. Our problem was that there were 61 members of Knesset who agreed with Netanyahu's policies, but there were 61 members of Knesset who didn't want him to be prime minister anymore because of his criminal corruption cases. And so no one could agree. Only after this third election, thankfully, it turned out that all the politicians were lying. None of them told the truth at all. And that is how we are on the way to having an election averted this time and having a new government finally after close to 18 months. Thankfully, the politicians have learned how to lie again. Now they can stop. Now they can stop with that lying and they can get to governing, right? In general, governments are a good thing to have. I think we've learned that more over the last year and a half when we've had a not fully functioning caretaker government in Israel. A caretaker government cannot do things like allocate new funding for even the most consensus issues, like giving money to Holocaust survivors for medicine so they'll stay alive longer. No more consensus issue than that. No funding. So now we will have a government that can make decisions that are very important for Israel's future. After a year and a half of the political correspondent of the Jerusalem Post being the person who was doing most of the hard work, at least until the coronavirus, now I can let the other beat writers of the Jerusalem Post do the hard work, the ones who actually cover with the politicians serving the people. My job is to cover the politicians serving themselves. It is time for those politicians really to be um, helping the people all across the country with the many challenges that Israel's facing today. And one of the first challenges for Israel, for its new government, is going to be something that the parties promised during the campaign, which is to work on reconciliation, to bring the people back together again after having a year and a half of infighting and political mess. Um, so I really hope that that will indeed be happening, because we need it. We need to be united in order to deal with the challenges ahead. And if we're going to talk about challenges ahead, let's talk about the other challenge that we're getting out of that could very well still be a challenge ahead. And that is, of course, that coronavirus that we love to despise, um, that made the end of my mother's life a little bit more of a challenge. And I will always resent that. And also, of course, the wonderful people who have been killed all over the world, and I express my condolences to everyone who has lost a loved one, especially to the Chabad community that lost um, three very, very special rabbis. Um, so Israel has handled the coronavirus a lot better than other countries have, thank God. We had smart policies at the very beginning of already cutting off flights from all around the world, and making people go into quarantine. After I visited my mother at the very end, I came to Israel and had 2 weeks where I was all alone in an empty apartment in order to keep the people safe. And I was willing to do that, as much of a challenge as that was, not seeing my amazing wife and children during that time. But it saved lives. Um, that was something smart that Israel did. Israelis, besides being innovative, were also known for being disciplined in one way, very not disciplined in other ways. But the discipline we learn being in a society where the overwhelming majority of the people serve in the army, in the IDF. And so when we are told that we have to take action in order to protect ourselves, we're pretty good at taking that action right away. And so that is what the overwhelming majority of people did in quarantining themselves and wearing masks when we were asked to wear masks, and being super careful. So that has turned out well. There are a couple populations in Israel that started off a little late in observing these rules, and that is why they were hit harder than the other populations were. But we're, for the most part, ending up relatively okay. As I sit here today, especially those of you watching this live, no one died today in Israel. Say in Hebrew, Al tiftach pe la satan, which translates in English into either don't open your mouth to the devil, or tfu, tfu. And so let's hope that that really does stay that way. Um, the number, as I'm sitting here, of Israelis who have died from the coronavirus is 239, um, which is terrible. Every life lost is a terrible tragedy. But Switzerland is a country that is of similar size to Israel and actually has fewer people than Israel does. And there have been 1,800 people who have lost their life to corona over there, compared to our 239. Now, Belgium is a country that's around the size of Israel, but has only slightly more people than Israel. And they've had a lot more than 239. They've had 8,400 people, wow, who've lost their life there in Belgium to this terrible virus. And so the policies of the Netanyahu government and himself have been very effective. And the hope now is that whatever cure that there is there, whether it's a vaccine or some medicine that treats people afterward who have COVID-19, will be successful. And while we would definitely want it to happen as soon as possible from anywhere around the world, it would be nice if it came from Israel. And then, of course, let's see who tries to boycott us then. And the other thing I want to say about the coronavirus in Israel is that it's been beautiful to see the spirit of people really uniting, uniting in going out on their porches and clapping for the medical professionals. That they've done, I think, all over the world. But in Israel, we also went on the porches and sang the four questions on the night of the Seder. And we could hear our neighbors. And while there were no mass Seders, which Chabad is known for all around the world, these individual Seders really united at that moment, these individual families in a beautiful kind of way. And it's pretty cool that because of the terrible coronavirus, and that uh, resulted in people having to have their Seder at home without having guests, that there were undoubtedly, statistically, more Seders that night on earth than any Passover in the history of mankind. And so that is the one positive thing that came out of the coronavirus on the face of this earth. We can hate the coronavirus for everything else that it has done, but we can be very thankful for everything. Now, of course, this is not the only challenge, this being Israel, that we're facing. Iran has not given up its hope of destroying Israel, but Iran has apparently been scared out of by Israel and is on its way out of Syria. And that is a wonderful accomplishment after 6 times over the past month, reportedly by foreign sources, that someone, possibly Israel, attacked Iranian nuclear installations in Syria. Um, so Israel had or whoever it was, had a pretty good hit on that Iranian facility the other day there in Syria, and hopefully has made an impression that our borders are going to be safer from now on. Another challenge that Israel is going to be facing in the months ahead is that Israel in July, according to the coalition agreement between Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, is going to be applying its sovereignty to the biblical heartland of the Jewish people, known as Judea and Samaria in the Torah, and known as the West Bank by the confused world, looking at the West Bank of the Jordan River from Jordan. And we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be just the settlement blocks that are where the overwhelming majority of the Jews in Judea and Samaria live, or whether it's going to be also some barren territory for security reasons, especially in the Jordan Valley, that Yitzhak Rabin, before his assassination, his last speech, said has to be part of Israel forever. Chances are that there will be some kind of serious plan applying Israeli sovereignty to that land and to the Jews living there, in part because you never know what's going to happen in the months ahead. There were other presidents, Democrats and Republicans, who are very proud of putting pressure on Israel. Some of those advisors who advise them want to come back if there's going to be a new president of the United States. And so whether people like or absolutely despise, very much in between, we do appreciate what he has done for Israel, and we have to show Hakar Tov to him, gratefulness for what he has done in the past and what he will apparently do in the future. And there is a consensus for that in Israel today. I will give you the results of an as yet unpublished poll last time I checked, because it was embargoed to Sunday. It said that 51.7% of Israeli Jews are currently in favor of applying Israeli sovereignty to that land. Only 27.9% against. And so that is very impressive to see the people of Israel uniting such a large amount in a way that we didn't think before. We in Israel, I think when it comes to big issues like diplomacy and security and economy, there's not a very big fight going on right now. I think that a consensus has developed. We've had 3 elections in the past year, but it's not because Israelis are divided. It's only because of technical political reasons that are now gone or almost gone. Um, we are not going through hyperpolarization like America is. And we're not jealous of what America has gone through and is still going through. We envy America for a lot of different things, and the hyperpolarization is not one of them. Um, so I'm going to end with a story of my talk by the University of Kansas that was co-sponsored there by Rabbi Teichtel at the Chabad and by college Democrats and college Republicans. And I remember I asked, and Hillel also, I asked the um, the college Democrats and Republicans leaders, when was the last time you did an event together? You know what they told me? They told me last Yom Ha'atzmaut a year ago, and last Israel's Independence Day. This was on Independence Day, and that's amazing. They can't unite on anything except Israel. We are the one issue that unites America today. Let's hope that we keep it that way. I mean, of course, I want America to be a lot more united, and a lot of other things too. But at least we are an issue that can still inspire people. Israel inspires. Israel is striving to be that light into the nations, and so I hope that those listening to this presentation come next year to Jerusalem as you promised on Seder night. I heard the promise through the window. You said you would come next year in Jerusalem, and so I hope that you come with the JLI. If the Messiah has not come by then, Mashiach, please come before then. But just in case he doesn't, sign up for next year's JLI trip to Israel. I've been Gil Hoffman, Chief Political Correspondent and Analyst of the Jerusalem Post, and it has been a pleasure to be with you here tonight.